still get it into. So I've got a number that have already come in and been received. And for the most part, people are doing a pretty good job about resizing and getting them in the right format. And there's some nice images in there. So so far, so good.
And remember, one thing that we did change this time is we split the creative section into 2 levels. So make sure when you send in your images, we'll know what level you're in. So if you don't know, don't worry about it. We'll put you in to the right
And I
place.
can say one other thing. So when you are submitting them, please give me the names of the titles. Don't forget that in caps. Don't give me long, lengthy titles. They won't fit in the Dropbox link. Try to keep your titles to no more than 2, 3, maximum 4 if it's a little sentence kind of thing. But try not to give me, this is where it was, and it was a trail, and it was here in Washington. It's just, I'm gonna have to cut it. So better you pick your title than me pick your title, okay? Thanks.
Okay, anybody else have anything for the good of the group? The cafe submission period ended yesterday, ends today. So if you have something for the cafe and you didn't get it in yet, you still have today till noon. Right. No, anyway, I did my F3C stuff last night at 11:30. And there was a problem with one of the titles and I can't fix it. So that was my bad. Because when you submit to F3C, they put everything in a waiting room and they look at it. And if there's any issues, they either call you or they send you an email, and then you can go back in and you have time to fix it, which is wonderful, except if the submission period is over, which they sent me the email this morning. So I can't go in there and fix it anymore. But that's bad on me for not being careful. Anyhow, so that's what I wanted to tell you. One more thing is the F3C's annual conference. I don't know how to beg you guys to participate in some of these things, but this one is in your house. This is virtual. You don't have to go to the West Coast of Florida. You just turn on your computer. And the bonus is that you could turn on your, even though it's on 2 specific days, if you pay to register, you have a month to go back in and watch the videos. It is totally worth it. I mean, for $100, no matter what, you're going to find 3 or 4 things in there that you're going to want to do. And so it's there. I keep sending it to you. It's important to look at it and see if there's something there that you think is worth it for you. But if you want to improve your photography, you need to take some classes, and this is a great way to do it for a reasonable price. There was a class the other night that a few of us took that was F3C sponsored it. I think it was $5 or $6 or something on Zoom. It was so worth it. It would have been worth $25. It just to listen to how it was nothing earth shattering that you didn't know, but to listen to a person frame concepts and talk about light and the quality of light and the direction of light in a really nice sequence. I mean, I don't care if you're shooting with a little tiny portable box camera versus a smartphone. It doesn't matter. This was about composition and looking and being observant and making decisions before you press the shutter. Not saying, oh, I'll fix this in post-processing, but actually taking the time to get the most out of the minute that you're taking that picture. Not shoot 10, shoot 2 or 3, but make them count. And that was great. And it was the same thing. If you didn't have time that night to do it, you could go watch it on the archives. They recorded it. Now it's too late because you didn't pay for it, so you can't watch the recording and you didn't see the thing. But so really consider things, especially now when they're so easy to do in your own house. You know, a lot of us don't have time to like go far away for a day, but certainly in your office.
Adrienne, if I may just say one thing about that. I learned this a long time ago with all kinds of work-related things when we went to conferences or symposiums or clinics. When you go to something like that, you say it's over my head. I don't, I'm not that good. I'm not going to be able to take anything away. And you actually will always find that
Yeah.
no matter what level you're on, you'll take away something, you'll take away 2 or 3 things, and then you'll take off on those things with a better understanding. And the next time you hear somebody speak about those things, it starts to come home. So don't not get involved in these things because you feel that I don't have a camera, I don't shoot with that equipment. They really are finding ways to make these workshops applicable to all. So just be aggressive and go at it. And it's just a little time. It's all it is it's just a little time on your part to take a step up.
Adrian, just one more thing, and
Go.
today's presentation is going to be about architecture. The Art of Photography on Meetup is having an architecture shoot in Fort Lauderdale in a few weeks. So people might want to check that out too.
He's talking about the group that I keep telling everybody to join. It's free and they're doing a lot of interesting trips. And you don't necessarily go there and stay stuck to these people. It's just, it's like, hello, hello, hello. Here's an interesting place to go and shoot pictures. And they're going on they're going to the Lake Worth Street Festival, and they're going, I think, Sunday morning at 8 o'clock before
Right.
people even get there. So that was their choice. And they had specific reasons why they wanted to go at 8 o'clock in the morning. But it's just wakes your head. If you never heard of that street festival, you would have a way to know about it. And they're going down, I think they're going down to Miami for one of the things, but some of them are local, some of them are further away. And even if you don't go on that day, it's just a nice thing to note that might be an interesting place to take yourself to move around and take some pictures. Okay, that's enough preaching. Okay. All right, I'm going to turn the meeting up to the people that are running it. It's the core group this month is Barbara and David and Harry, and they have a PowerPoint and information for us. And then afterwards, we're not going to FAU. The parking was just going to be a real problem there. You certainly can go to FAU on your own and park near the movie theater and walk around. But I didn't think that if 10 people or 12 people went over to FAU, they could all find parking spaces. That could have been a problem. So instead, we're going to an office park. This office park is off Clintmore, and I sent you the directions. I even sent you a little map so you don't get lost. And we have a reservation for lunch at 12:30 at Prezzo's, which is right on Military Trail. Very easy to find. It's in the same shopping center with Burton's. If you've been to Burton's, and we have the reservation is outdoors. Okay.
And one more thing, Adrian,
Go.
just a suggestion that when you go to the corporate park, I would take that main road when you turn off of Clintmore and go straight all the way down past Congress and then work your way back.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of great buildings across Congress. And it's fun to just kind of work your way back and see what you might be interested in.
Okay, that's a great point. So that main road's Broken Sound Parkway and you can see it on the map. It wanders through that office park and goes to Congress. And what he's saying is just keep going across the other side of the street to more.
Are we meeting us at a specific place at a specific time, or completely on our own and we end up at Prezzo?
That one. Completely. I couldn't, since we didn't know the names of any of the buildings, there was no real way to say, let's meet at this building.
And it's hard to walk. It's a big place to walk through. So each building has its own parking lot. So you might want to just drive around and see what you want, what you're interested in.
Okay.
Adrian, I don't know whether I missed it. Did you tell us what time we're going to meet for lunch?
12:30. All right. Okay, guys, it's yours. Tell me when. Do you want the PowerPoint right away?
Yeah, you're starting with me. You can put the first photo up.
Okay.
And while she's doing that, I just it came to mind that if you have the time before you submit pictures and are able to go back, it might be good to try it at various times of the day, because we're going in the middle of the day. It is probably not the best light for shooting architecture or many other things. Okay. Today, we're going to do the architecture in black and white. I'm going to start off with detail in architecture. Barbara will do patterns in architecture, and that will be followed by David with abstract architecture. There may be some duplication on this because, well, that's just the way it is with architecture. It shows some beautiful patterns. It may be great detail as well. But that's okay. First picture. Okay. Most pictures you see of churches, cathedrals, and other structures show the whole impressive structure. But by cropping in tightly, you can highlight fantastic repetitive detail, making an interesting pattern and shoot detail you don't always notice in the wider shot. You can go on to the next picture. Once you begin to search, you'll be surprised at the amount of detail you'll be able to fill in your frame with. Of course, there are gargoyles, clocks, windows, spires, sundials, and weather vanes. A little closer to the ground, you'll find stone carvings, present and sometimes intricate detailed wood carvings on the exterior walls around doorways and above windows. You can do the next picture. Filling the frame with repeating patterns such as brickwork or tile or a roof can create an interesting abstract shots. Just fill in your frame, watch your shutter speeds if you're working handheld, and make sure you're focusing accurately, as blur really doesn't work for this type of shot. Next picture. When photographing detail, if possible, use a tripod for better stabilization. If you do, remember to turn off your camera's stabilization function if it has it. Canon uses the term IS, or image stabilization. Nikon calls it VR, or vibration reduction. If not turned off when using a tripod, it'll actually create some blur. You will see that most of the shots we show you, but not all, will be in black and white. Black and white photography further highlight shape and form and pattern in the image. Next picture. When color is removed, the distractions that come with it are also done away with. This allows you to really see what is important. You can clearly see the elements of the photo within the frame in terms of their shape, form, and their unspoken relationships. When photographing architecture, next picture. When photographing architecture, it is common to try to photograph the whole building, or maybe a whole room. However, focusing on the smaller details of a building can also make for great photos. Good subjects for architectural detail, if I haven't already mentioned them, are columns, pedestals, elaborate door frames, and balustrades. You can also try more abstract photographs by capturing strong lines where walls and ceilings meet. And you'll see a lot of that in David's. I'm just going to mention a few quick tips. Now, what I'm talking about comes directly from my handout, so I'm sorry if it's repetitive. But if you read them afterwards, it'll just reinforce what I'm saying. In terms of photography, it can be better to pull away from the grand and look for opportunities in the details. All buildings and structures are sums of their smaller parts, and it's these parts that can often lead to visually interesting photos. Low contrast and lighting. Overcast days, next photo, please. Overcast days provide incredibly soft light that is quite suited for architectural details. The softness allows you to capture subjects with a lot of fine detail that would normally be lost in the contrast. Next photo. This last tip is for when you're back home. If your images are full of texture or strong patterns, consider a black and white conversion. And we're looking for black and white. It's stripping away the color element out of these images will help to emphasize your compositional elements and can lead to much stronger photos. And you can go through the next 3 pictures. Oh, this one here, don't go yet. I want to ask if anyone knows what this is. Now, this was shot on a photo club shoot. Anybody have any idea where it was and what it was? If you do, just speak out. I can't see hands.
I think it's a grate on the ground.
Correct?
Sewer grate, storm grate.
And does anyone know where it was? It's actually quite pretty in color. I think it was blue. Okay, it was at the Guitar Hotel.
It's interesting that it says Iron Age. Do you see?
I do. I see
The
that.
upper.
Yeah. That may be the manufacturer. I don't know. Okay, you've heard the old line about the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. It's a theory that something grand and impressive can result from the combination of less significant components. What you may not have heard is that the opposite can be just as true. Depending upon your lens, vantage point, available lighting, and hosts of other variables, it is entirely possible, if not likely, that an entire building would appear so small in the frame that whatever drew you to it in the first place could be lost and overlooked in the actual photo. Also, light that might be perfect for windows, doorways, and other details could be completely unsuitable for capturing the detail and character of the building as a whole. Let's see, I'm about done. That's about it. I think Adrian, there are a few more photos if you could go through the last 2. Now, I did this one in black and white as well as in color as well as black and white. You can show the last one. And I'm just wondering if anyone has any thoughts as to which of the 2 pictures look better. Now, I had one opinion, and when David, I, and Barbara and Adrian went over this, they all disagreed with me. What do you think?
Can we see the other one again? Yeah, I like the color picture better.
Thank you.
I agree,
Someone
the
agrees
color
with me.
picture.
Okay, that is the end of my presentation. And Barbara, you're up next.
I think David's up next.
Oh, David, I'm sorry.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, Harry said there's a lot of overlap between patterns and details and abstracts. It all depends on what your intent is. And abstracts are really about shape and geometry and graphics and can mean different things to people. If you can go to the next photo. So the thing about abstracts is sometimes people define it as, you know, you have no idea what it actually came from. It's just a pattern, a graphic, whatever. But if you'll see some of the handouts that we send to, other photographers define it, it could be an abstract within the context of a building or a shape or whatever. I'm going to show you at the end of my presentation how you can take an abstract of a building and then make it more and more abstract as you go on. Anyway, one of the ways to find abstraction is through reflections, which I really like to do. And a number of these pictures, all of these pictures were taken locally. This is at the Broken Sound Corporate Park. Just love the reflection of the trees in the building and creating some kind of abstraction. Next. This is also another building that's where we're going today. And you'll see it's a curved building, and just the reflection of it, of the other side of the curve, created these incredible patterns that I found interesting. Actually, I walked around and took a zillion shots of this because there are so many ways to create abstractions from reflections like this. Next. Again, this is where we're going today. I just love the idea of the squares and the diamonds and those kind of amorphous shapes that are created from the reflection of the palm trees in the glass. There was no processing done to it. This is the actual photo. Next. This is a building that's on Federal Highway at the end of Glades. You probably have seen it. It's a brown and bronze building, but I put it in black and white to concentrate on I love the idea of where the lines connect. You still see the clouds in there, but you see the curvature and these curved lines connecting in the middle. I thought was really cool. Next. This was just an example of how you could, this is the previous shot, but I just played with this. This is on Photoshop Elements using polar coordinates, just making it even more abstract and seeing what fun things you can do with it. And I think that's the thing about abstracts. You can go as far as you want or as little as you want. Next. Okay, so here, this is simply a staircase at one of the parking garages at one of the corporate buildings where we're going to go today. It was just a side view of that. Again, just love the graphics, love the lines, actually love the texture in it too. And then if you go to the next shot, this just twirled a little and now it's a total abstract and you have no idea what it is. But again, creates interesting shapes. So for those of you, whether you're on Snapseed or whether you're on Photoshop Elements or whatever, play with the distortions too, because they really make interesting abstracts. Next. This is at FAU. This is one of the structures that hold up the stadium. And I just thought it was interesting, went under it and just shot straight up and just kind of loved the tunnel effect and the way the perspective of bringing your eye right through to the middle. Next. This is also one of the structures at the stadium. And this is just using, sometimes when you use threshold, which is in Photoshop Elements, it's also, I believe, in Snapseed, that intense black and white just create these incredible shapes and contrasts and just a great graphic look. So I personally love high contrast architecture photography because I think the shapes in it are so amazing. Next. Okay, this is a building on Federal Highway in Fort Lauderdale. It's just really, I just pulled over, got to the bottom of it, shot it straight up with just a little bit of sky. Some people think it looks like a runway. Some people recognize the building. Some people think it's totally abstract. This won a Spider Award, Black and White Spider Award. But I just thought it was, again, it was just driving by and just seeing something that the way you shoot it can make it very abstract, because otherwise just straight on, it's a straight building. Next. This, I believe, this was in West Palm Beach. It's an office building and across the street are condos. And yes, you could see it's an office building, you can see it's a building, but look at the patterns that were made in the distorted reflections of all the balconies of the condos. Again, thought it was really interesting. I could make other shots out of this by going in close and just looking at those patterns, but I loved seeing kind of the edge of the building to give it a bit of perspective. Next. This is the entrance when you drive up to the Guitar Hotel. And I just thought that entrance, and I isolated it in black and white, was so spacey and almost looked like an airplane or a rocket ship or something. So I isolated it, and now it's a total abstraction, but there's so many beautiful pieces of architecture there, and we've been there and talked about it before, but if there's any place you're going to do architectural details, patterns, and abstracts, it's the Guitar Hotel. Next. This is the one that's not local. It's a door in Prague, and it is kind of a pattern, but there is an abstraction to it. It had the same, it was a door within a door. And again, put it through threshold and just created this great abstraction. This is going to be in the current issue of Black and White magazine. This is a chandelier in the Guitar Hotel that I actually shot and just turned it upside down and turned it black and white. And again, it becomes a total abstraction, and people read into it that it's buildings rising or whatever. It doesn't really matter what it was originally. It's just the feeling of what the abstraction gives you at the present. Next. This is, there's an area in Fort Lauderdale called Fat Village, and they built a new hotel there. And this was kind of the grid on the garage on the side of the building. A great, again, played with it, posterized it. It again creates just interesting shapes and gray tones. Next. This again is where we're going today. I just like the lines and triangles going in all different directions and still getting a hint of a building and the clouds. Next. This is a top of a building actually in downtown Delray. Again, you don't have to identify it as a building. I just liked the shapes, and there was an overhang on the left side that I just thought was really interesting, like an arrow pointing to the other shapes. Again, everyone has a different taste level or interest in graphics, but to me, this was really interesting. Next. This is at FAU. It's one of the newer buildings that's right near the stadium, if you go. And it's got great, the area on the right is the actual architectural element that's in front of the building. And on the left-hand side is the reflection of it in the building. Again, just like the shapes, the color, the shading, and just thinks creates some dynamic interest. Next. So architecture is not only just buildings. A bridge is a piece of architecture too. This was shot, it's the underside of the bridge at Boynton Beach Inlet. It was shot, turned on its side, and then the patterns and reflected. So I created this shot, but the basic shot is the underside of the bridge. And it just created this really interesting shot. It just, the way it reflected the foliage and everything was kind of interesting. But the underside of the bridge itself, it almost made it look like another type of building. And again, you could just have fun with this. You don't, if it's abstract, it doesn't have to be, exactly as you shot it. You can play with it and have a lot of fun with it. Next. So this is the final thing I wanted to show you. I started showing you this a little earlier. So the first shot here is the staircase at the corporate park we're going to. The second one, as I showed you, is using twirl to just give it some interest. Then I went back and said, okay, it's black and white, but add a little color to the steps. And suddenly it gives it a whole new graphic look. Then on the fourth shot on the bottom on the left, I isolated those railings and the steps, and it's almost like a piece of a square floating in air. And then went in close up on it and twirled it. And again, it just becomes more and more graphic. The last one was really just, there's a distortion called polar opposites, and just created this totally new thing that almost looks like a sculpture. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara, but the last thing I just want to say is that, you know, have fun with it. When you shoot something, you can shoot it as abstract, and that's fine, but you can also take it as far as you want. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My section is on patterns in architecture, but I want to emphasize that patterns are everywhere, not just architecture. And basically, a pattern is an arrangement or sequence of regularity found in comparable objects. Well, I started looking at patterns when I had an assignment from one of Irene Hill's classes, and we had to shoot patterns. And it's like you never stop looking. Once you've done an assignment like that, you can walk anywhere and see patterns. Okay. Irene, you can go ahead. Or Adrian, sorry. So this is a building in Orlando, and I took the picture on an angle. I had noticed the building the day before when I was there and wanted to go back in the morning, and it was a very gray day, and you can see the mist on some of the windows. And it just was really beautiful patterns, the way they had done the windows with these poles suspended in front of them. It made a very 3D effect. Next. This building is in Arlington, Virginia, and everywhere you look is patterns. There's patterns of rectangles, there's angular patterns, there's patterns of light fixtures. Just everywhere you look, vertical, horizontal. And this is what I mean. This picture in color really was so busy, but once I put it in black and white, it's still busy, but it showed the patterns more and it calmed it down some. If anybody has any questions while I'm going through this, I'm fine with questions, okay? Go ahead. Okay, these were four, well, actually, I think there were like 6 of them, columns in a hotel in Cannes. And again, they were magnificent, but you see they're not only a vertical pattern, there's a horizontal pattern, and there's patterns even behind the columns that you see. So there's patterns everywhere you look, whether it's in clothing or buildings or sidewalks, everywhere. So just keep your eyes open. You'll never stop looking at patterns. Even you can ride in a car and pass buildings and go, oh, that's a cool pattern. And it just never stops. Once you start looking at patterns of things to take pictures of, you're golden. Next. This is in the Qatar Hotel. As previously mentioned, it is a wealth of photography beauty. This not only has patterns in the wood that makes up the whole panel, but it has patterns in the structure itself. It is a piece of art and it's a wall, and the patterns in the wood complement this. There's squares and rectangles, there's diagonals, there's different shades of gray, black, and white. This basically was just turned into black and white. I did not do a lot of processing on this at all. Next. This is a rooftop near my dermatologist's office, and it's on a second floor. So when I was on the balcony and looked over, I thought, oh God, next time I have to bring my camera, because the lines were so interesting that you had horizontals and circles and diagonals and verticals and repeating shapes. And it just was awesome. And turning this into black and white was really fun as well. And it does have grays and whites and blacks, so it makes a more interesting composition. Next. This actually is a building in Paris. It was at one point a temple, because you can see, if you look closely, there's a Jewish star down at the bottom, and at the very top, it looks like tabernacles. But I was intrigued by this building, the patterns of the windows. You know, at the sides, the slightly arched windows, and then you have more rectangular shapes, and then the fence at the bottom, which is very straight and vertical. All patterns. Everything here is a pattern. The bricks are a pattern. The windows are a pattern. And between the windows, there's patterns. Again, this building, you notice the patterns more when they're in black and white. It stands out more. Next. And this is the famous Guitar Hotel. I was standing very close to it and looking up. Normally, when you look at the Guitar Hotel, especially on a nice day, it's the blue of the hotel and the reflection of the clouds that are really interesting. But when I turned it into black and white, the clouds fade out. You can still see kind of the cloud shapes on the glass, but you really see the linear patterns of the Guitar Hotel, the diagonals, the horizontals, the verticals. It's just a structure that you could photograph in 100 different ways, inside and out, every time you went there. Next. These buildings are in Arlington, Virginia. I was intrigued by the round shapes, and then these other buildings that were butted up to it. The buildings were very bright colored as well. They were orange and blue. And when I turned it into black and white, it also was very interesting, because it provided a gray and black and white composition. But look at all the patterns. You can go from the top of the rounder building and see the patterns of the square windows. Then you go down and you see the patterns of these rectangles and squares. And you go down and you see these little tiny windows, and then the pattern of the stripe running across them. And even on the other building, just a multitude of patterns between the windows and the designs, and even the top of the building, the way the lights are and the panels are. So it's just unlimited what you can do with patterns in buildings, and patterns anywhere as well. Next. Okay, now this is a building, I believe it was in Arles in France. And there is actually two pictures I think you have. I don't know if you can put them side by side.
No.
Nope. Well, that's okay. Oh, there it was. Okay. So this is the original picture turned into black and white. And this is an ancient structure, and you see, even back then, I mean, patterns were integral in architecture. You see the patterns underneath the roof line, then you see the Gothic windows, then you see the arches and the designs in between the Gothic windows, and all the brick patterns, and the patterns run around each doorway and each window, and the pattern of the columns. It's just fascinating. You know, this is not a new concept, patterns. So this is an ancient building full of patterns. Next. Now, this one I played with, I was trying to simplify how the structure looked. So I wanted to show more negative space, and I took out a lot of the detail in the buildings. I took out everything that was behind the arches. And it also makes a very interesting looking picture. You still see the patterns. They're not as clear, but you see the Gothic windows, you see the arches and all the lines, etc. Next. Okay. I don't know where this building was. I don't remember. But again, it's, you know, it's a simple building, but if you look at it in black and white, I mean, look how many patterns you have. Patterns down the columns, you have patterns within the windows, you have lines, you have rectangles, you have squares. It's just beautiful. And if you take things at an angle, it also creates kind of an interesting view of patterns. Like you can kind of see the corner wrapping here, and then you see a different kind of pattern going the other way. So don't be afraid to move from your spot. You know, someone told me once, stand in a square and turn all 4 different directions and take whatever you see. And that's a fun way to look at things.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, these are remarkable. This was in Valencia, Spain. These actually are smokestacks from, this was in the Arts and Science Complex in Valencia, Spain. But I thought these were just so beautiful. You have the pattern of the crackle of the mosaic, and then the patterns of all them in a row. And then you have sky patterns. So it was just beautiful. They're actually bright blue when you see them in person. But again, it was just magnificent. And here's something that was meant as a very utilitarian part of the structure, and they made it gorgeous. Next. Okay, I think this was also part of that same complex. The buildings there were just amazing in Spain. But look at what you see. You have curved lines. You have lines on top of lines and top of lines. I mean, you have lines that have depth, and you have circular poles going through. You have lines at the bottom that look like part of the structure, but were done very artistically. You also have reflections in that part, which is glass. It's just a beautiful building. And I took out the background because I wanted all the emphasis to be on the structure. Next. This again is from the same Arts and Science Center in Valencia. And I just thought this building was awesome. You know, at first you looked at it, you thought you were looking at a reflection of it, and it's not. That's the way it's built. But look at, you have points, you have curves, you have lines, you have verticals. You even were, I was lucky enough to get the jet stream off the top there. And it's just in black and white. In color, it was a very busy picture. In black and white, it really emphasizes all the shapes. And even the negative shapes, when you look through the sculpture or through the building, form part of the patterns that you see. Next. Okay. And this is a building, I do not remember where it is, but it's a, I obviously turned it from black, it was a dark building, and I reversed it. I don't think I put it in, oh, lost the name.
It looks like infrared almost.
Yeah, I think I put it in like really high key. And it just showed the curves of the building and the rectangles of the buildings and the little dots in between every window. I mean, there's a million patterns in here: horizontal bricks, vertical beams, it was just a very unusual building, and I was just having fun, so I turned it white.
Hmm.
What you can do. The end. Anybody have
Very
any,
well done. Really nice presentation.
thank you. Anybody have any questions for any of the three of us? I'm sure you're all just dying to get out there and shoot patterns.
I think an interesting thing to do, if, you know, whether you're shooting new or go back into your travel photos
Yeah,
and look at things that you shot that were just like, you know, for a record of, oh, I was here, and see if you, what happens if you turn them to black and white and concentrate on a portion that has patterns in it.
A great
I
idea.
I have a question for David.
Uh-oh.
No, no, no. I loved adding the red to those photos.
Right.
I don't use Photoshop, I use GIMP. Would you
I don't-
know how to do that?
I don't know how to do that on that. I honestly don't.
How do
Um,
you do it?
Well, in Photoshop Elements, there's one thing, it's called color replacement. And you just click on the color you want and then go over the area you want with a paintbrush. And it
Okay,
just
that's
fills
what I,
it in.
okay. Yeah, I just did that actually. I took a picture of my husband. He's on the bocce team. So I took a picture with his t-shirt and I have 2 wool balls that go in the dryer. So I took a picture with the 2 white balls and then I made them green. So okay, good.
The other
Thank you.
thing you can do, I just want to say on, and I think you can do this on some of the phone apps too, but on Photoshop Elements, they have a thing where you pick, I think it's called Color Pop. So if you have a color picture, you can click on just the color you want to keep and everything else will turn to black and white.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's really easy.
great presentation, the 3 of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could, Dave, I have one more question. Could you just tell us a little bit about what you use Threshold for?
So Threshold takes out all grays. It just goes straight to really black and really white. So it just creates really graphic images. Usually it's pretty much unidentifiable, but it's really cool. And actually somebody in one of the meetup groups does a lot of portraits that way. She shoots it and there's rim lighting on a person's face, and then all you get is the rim lighting, and it's just beautiful. It's something fun to play with. It just
Virginia
takes
has a
out-
question.
Oh, sorry.
I wanted to ask, David, how do you do the twirls?
So again, on Photoshop Elements, which is the only thing I really use, there's a, under the
Filters.
filters, there's a thing called Distort, and under Distort, there's a thing called Twirl. And if you
Okay.
go in, there's a slider that you can decide how much twirl you want. You could just do a very slight one that just looks pretty real, or you can push it as far as you want.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For those of you that are starting to play with Photoshop Elements, one thing that's really important is when you bring the picture into the software, that you make a copy right away and then put your original back, you know, like click on the X for the original so it goes back to your files. And then you can do anything you want on the copy and feel free enough that you're not going to ruin your original picture. Little tidbit. Any other questions? Okay, great. That was a really interesting presentation. For those of us that are going on the shoot, we'll meet you at lunch at 12:30 at Prezzo's. Have fun. And I'm really interested to see what you come out with for the review session. Did I give you a date for sending images? No. The review date is the 19th. So let me look at the calendar. No, the review date can't be the 19th.
You did have
It's
a,
the 18th. It's
The 18th.
the
Again, my proofreader.
18th.
Okay. is the 18th. So give me your pictures. If I didn't already tell you, give me your pictures by the Sunday before, which is the
How
13th.
many?
2 images, By
Any
the sun.
parameters?
no parameters. Well, black and white.
Yeah, it could be, I mean, again,
Can they,
again,
can
they
they
kind
be
of overlap.
creative?
Yes, they can be creative if you want to. If you're gonna do the creative, send me the original also so that I can put 2 of them side by side. I'm sorry,
The
David,
original in color or black and white?
the original color.
Okay.
Adrian, do we sit, like, those of us just using our iPhones, do we just, I've always had difficulty getting it to you. Do I just send it to you right from my iPhone and that's it? Or do
If
I
you
have
want to, yes, you can send it right from the phone. You can either send it as a text or as an email attachment. And send it the
Adrian,
largest
who-
size possible.
Whose name is the reservation under your name or Valencia Falls
Under
Photo
me,
Study Group?
under my name. Okay.
Thank
Goodbye,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Excellent presentation.
And